Most kids are ecstatic to enter summer vacation. But when we look around the classroom, we often see that teachers are equally as excited. Some new studies have shown that as we piece together the rise of incidents of violence in schools, that many of the people who care for our kids in our community every day feel unsafe and often threatened walking inside of their school building every day. So as people who care for kids and who care for people who care for kids, this is an important topic to think about and also an important one to bring up in our communities. Because if the kids in our communities think that all the adults know of all the violence and the things that everyone's wrestling with at school, and we allow it to happen, perhaps we're just teaching our kids that violence is normal. And this can be a dark place. But on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in our daily segment Facing the Dark, we're going to look to Dr. Kathy and ask her for some insight on how parents and people in the community should think well about what we're finding in teacher surveys and how we can step forward with confidence in our communities to help the people who are helping our kids every day. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, across the United States, violence against teachers has ratcheted up since kind of the widespread return of in-person learning in 2021. In some areas, the problem is worse than it was pre-pandemic. The data's limited right now from what we're seeing because many states simply don't track teacher assaults, or they don't use the same methodology to make the data comparable across states. But in a nationwide American Psychological Association survey of nearly 15,000 teachers and staff from July 2020 to June 2021, 14% of the teachers reported physical violence from students, and 49% of the teachers said that they wanted to quit or switch schools. While teachers are frequently hurt intervening in fights, some are targeted. The incidents go along with more attention on violence in schools more broadly, including fighting and bullying among students. So, Dr. Kathy, this is an incredibly complicated issue. I don't know if you can kind of point the finger at the teachers, which I think is natural in a lot of different settings and cases, but I've heard that some schools are actually finding success in treating violent kids as kids who have trauma. And then you have these parents at home who many times are trying their best to kind of support the kids, some with special or mental health needs. And I just don't think that you can kind of point a finger at any of this. And so for me, I think I'm kind of left with this place of, we're just not okay. What are your thoughts here with this issue?
Yeah, we're not okay. That's a great conclusion. Violence against teachers, it's grossly inappropriate. I mean, first of all, also, the fact that some states don't track teacher assaults makes me angry. Teachers need to be protected, need to feel safe in their environment. And if I was in a place and I reported that I had been assaulted and nobody even, takes notice of that in that way, that I just find that really discouraging. The fact that 49% of teachers in this survey said they wanted to quit or switch schools, we should all be very alarmed about that because most of the kids in this country are in the public schools. Your education matters for so much of life. It's a really, really deep concern. So we're not okay. It's wrong that it's happening, and it's wrong to point a finger to one particular person. Are some teachers coming across maybe as not loving? Well, of course. And are some kids coming to school with a chip on their shoulder? Absolutely. Are some kids not parented? Are some kids watching, a dad who gets his way by being, quote unquote violent? Absolutely. So it's a mess, and it's everybody on deck to try to solve the problem.
The way you left that kind of is interesting because it is everyone's kind of matter to be engaged and address. But I think that when you're a parent and you see violence in your school, the natural reaction is to kind of pull your kids out. Is that a good practice here? I think there's some that kind of bring it up to the school board or meet with a teacher, and sometimes we kind of put the blame on them, or we kind of try to work with them and help them kind of navigate the situation. But what would you say a family should do when they do see violence in their school?
Yeah, fair question. And parents need to do what is best for their situation. And certainly if you believe in the God of the Bible, then you would pray and ask for insight. You would consult with your kids, in my opinion, if they're old enough to be consulted with. I don't think we start with the school board. I think we start with the teacher and then the administrator of that school if we didn't feel we got where we wanted with the teacher, and then perhaps the supervisor of the administrators, perhaps, up to a superintendent. And then ultimately, you can address it at the school board meeting. That's a parent's right. And parents who are involved nowadays to let their children know, I will advocate for you, right? I mean, the parent's job, again, is provide and protect, be on your kid's side. They need to know that you're going to believe them, and you'll do some research to make sure that they're telling you the truth. But then they need to see that you're on their side, and that would mean possibly going and talking to some people, talking to the parents of kids too, if that's a safe place for you to go, possibly sets of parents coming in together to talk with a guidance counselor about why certain kids just don't click and why they're picking on somebody. All that is really appropriate. And teaching your kids who they are so they don't believe the lie that's coming out of somebody else's mouth. Do you know who you are, and do you know what you're capable of doing and how you're capable of behaving wisely? I think I would also, put those ideas in there as well.
What should adults know and parents know about why kids kind of act out in violence? Is it an identity thing always? Or is there something that we should kind of be thinking about as we see this happen in our communities?
Excellent question. I appreciated that we learned that some of the schools are treating violent children as ones who have trauma. And that's what I would start with by saying the research on trauma brain is real. The research on what happens in the developmental years to a child's brain and heart when they observe what they ought not see, when they are abused, molested, abandoned, rejected. It just depends upon the child and how they would feel about things. But trauma creates trauma, and these children need our love and our compassion. They're broken. They're broken in a broken system. We don't excuse it. We don't say, because you're broken and you've observed violence, we're going to let you be violent. No, but we have compassion, and we understand that a bad day doesn't make them a bad kid. And we try to the very best of our ability to get them the kind of support that they need, which would be, family intervention, parental education, if the parents are open to it. And if not, that's a whole nother discussion. And helping kids learn how to handle difficult moments rightly.
One of the helpful things that I feel like I'm taking away from this conversation is the reality that many times the world just doesn't know what to do with the brokenness that's before it. And so sometimes the best thing to do might be to kind of normalize it. Not that we're normalizing evil, but that we're normalizing the fact that things are just kind of broken. And in that brokenness, we just try to find the best way forward. We just try to keep taking steps forward and not knowing which way is actually a way towards redemption, which is a dynamic in the beautiful story that God is writing for all of humanity, and that we get to invite other people into who might not have an understanding of the truth and the beauty and the gloriousness that is salvation in Jesus Christ. It's something that I think Paul was trying to get across to the Colossian church that saw so many things normalized inside of their culture, but knew that God's redemptive story was actually the way that they were supposed to walk in and lead their community in. So this is what Paul writes at the beginning of chapter 4, and we're starting at verse 2. Continue steadfastly then in prayer, being watchful in it with thanksgiving. At the same time, pray also for us, that God may open to us a door for the word to declare the mystery of Christ, on account for which I'm in prison, that I may make it clear, which is how I ought to speak. Walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. I think that's exactly what Dr. Kathy's talking about here. The call for us to understand how the world is thinking about the brokenness that's in the world. And then with graciousness and seasoned speech, to walk alongside our friends and our community, to guide towards the redemptive work of Jesus Christ and the things that he's calling our community to, which is redemption and restoration from brokenness that we know is ever present in our communities. And walking in that way is a bright light that will shine and cut through incredible darkness. And we hope that's an encouragement for you. Thanks for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast today in our daily segment, Facing the Dark. My name's Wayne Stender. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook and the rest of us here on the team, I want to say thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.